We need a collective investment to relaunch a political process. The urgency is the humanitarian support and release of hostages, but we need a relaunch of the political process for the two-state solution. And I think that we have to discuss about how we can put this into practice. Maybe a conference can be a useful step to gather international initiative and direct our collective efforts towards this end. I can assure you, my dear Norwegian Minister, my dear Prime Minister, that we will continue at the European Union level to invest all our efforts in support of these objectives, and I hope that this meeting today will mark another important contribution by the international community to move closer to a solution to the devastating and unsustainable situation in Gaza, on the whole Palestinian territories, and also affecting positively Israel and the whole region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. And let me start by thanking Norway and the European Union for taking the initiative and inviting our international partners to meet here at the EU offices in Brussels to host this very important meeting that comes at a very critical and important time. Important time because it also comes at the same week when 3 European countries made very, very important, courageous decisions to recognize the State of Palestine. And it comes only a week after 143 other countries voted in the United Nations General Assembly to say that Palestine is ready for statehood and it's time to recognize Palestine. But the meeting is also important for another reason. It's important because what's happening in Gaza and the West Bank on the ground. Gaza has been going through very difficult, very alarming situation with the humanitarian losses where we see increasing every day, but also the physical damages that will make our job of rebuilding much more demanding. Having said all of that, we're still hopeful as Palestinians that many decades of struggle and working towards independence are coming closer than ever before. These efforts, these announcements, these meetings are key building blocks towards making Palestine independent, sovereign, viable state a reality. So in this context, we see the meeting today as a very important opportunity for us as a government, a new government, to present with our international partners with the outlines of our priorities and plans for the coming period. And also an opportunity to thank them all for the support they have done, extended to our people over the years. In terms of our priorities, we will be informing the international partners meeting that we are primarily focusing on 3 other key priority areas, in addition to, of course, the political track. The first priority is to support our people in Gaza. They need every support we can. And I think the best support we can all do for them is to speed up the ceasefire. Every day represents a major loss of human lives and properties and hope for our people. So we want to see a ceasefire taking place very quickly, and we want to be prepared as a government to do the necessary job of taking care of our people in the first opportunity we have in terms of providing humanitarian help, in terms of restoring basic services, in terms of rebuilding the institutions of the Palestinian Authority in Gaza, reintegrate them with our institutions in the West Bank, and start building the initial steps for economic recovery and hopefully provide a better life for our people in Gaza. The second priority our government is working on is to reform and build better institutions that are capable of meeting the expectations of our citizens, improve our efficiency of providing these services, make them more efficient and less costly, but also make them more transparent and sustainable. We are going to work on implementing an agenda that we have developed over the last few weeks to turn around things in Palestine so that we not only get closer to our people, not only be able to provide services in a better fashion, but also build the institutions of the state that we all want to see realized on the ground as soon as possible. And institutions are key for good governance and for viable states. And the third priority for the government is to stabilize the financial and economic situation on the ground. Things have been very difficult in this area too, not only because of the war. Before that, the continuing occupation, restrictions of movement and access, which you referred to, Mr. Borrell, and the siege on Gaza, but also in the last few months, an increased pressure on the finances of the Palestinian Authority because of the decisions by the Israeli government to withhold significant resources that are important to us as a government to continue to provide services for our citizens. This is a very unfortunate situation. This is not going to be helpful. As you indicated, the Palestinian leadership have made every effort to keep the peace and the calm in the West Bank, despite all challenges. We don't want anyone, including Israel, to undermine our efforts. So it's an opportunity to ask Israel to reconsider and stop these actions and release our money immediately. And I also going to ask the international partners to, in this meeting, to do the same and request the immediate release of our money so that we can continue to provide the services to our people and to ensure that we will be ready to reform our institutions and be ready to help our people in Gaza and hopefully together sustain our efforts towards statehood and peace for the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Mr. Minister, the floor is
Thank you very much, dear High Representative, dear Prime Minister, dear Josep, dear Mohammad. I'm honored to be with you. I think very wise words were said, and in the interest of time I will not repeat them, but we know how dramatic the situation is, obviously, in Gaza with the extreme suffering. We need a ceasefire. We need humanitarian efforts, but we also need to take better care of the Palestinian authorities that we do have, because there is no alternative, and I think we are all convinced there is no alternative in the long run to a two-state solution. A two-state solution requires a Palestinian government. Norway is one of the countries who have recently recognized Palestine as a state, but countries that have recognized and countries who have not yet recognized do agree across the board that the outcome must be a Palestinian state. And then we need to make sure that the Palestinian Authority, which we have, and which does have what it can of control in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, has to be able to survive, to be strengthened, to improve its capacity to deliver services, to reform, and also to plan for a future return to Gaza, because we want one Palestine to be governed by one government. This is what we're doing here. There are a series of meetings coming up in Brussels on these issues. This meeting, which will start in less than a minute, is a partner meeting where the key donors will listen to Prime Minister Mustafa's presentation of his plans for strengthening the government, strengthening its capacity and its reform plans. And I will urge all donors to really listen carefully, understand both how dire the situation is. It's really close to a very, very, very serious situation, even in the West Bank, but also to understand that we here have a government, a new government in Palestine, that is committed to really dealing with these issues, if they are allowed to, which means we as donors have to step up our political and financial support. Israel has to live up to its promises to make sure that the Palestinian money that belongs to Palestine, which is collected on the PA's behalf, is actually transferred. And all this has to be seen in the big picture of how we move forward to an alternative to this endless cycle of violence, where people in Israel are fearing terror and mourning for their hostages, where people in Gaza are experiencing extreme violence on a daily basis, but not only that, also starvation and other type of suffering, and where we see an increased level of violence also in the West Bank. We have to get out of this. We need to strengthen the voice of the moderate people who actually want to get a solution where Israelis and Palestinians alike can live peacefully together, and that's exactly why we need to work in support of Prime Minister Mustafa and his able and capable government, and help them to become the embryo of the state that we do not only recognize but also want to see in practice on the ground.
Jazilan, this concludes the press statements. Thank you for joining, and have a nice afternoon.